Hi there, it's day 14, Sunday, so you're at the end of the first 2 weeks of your detox and reset. Well done for being here. And just in case you've come across this video on YouTube and you don't know what I'm talking about, please click the link in the video notes below. That will take you to the page on my website, which explains everything that you need to know about this 31-day detox and reset program, which follows the paleo diet, which follows the primal health model, the ancestral health model. So it's holistic and it's powerful. And I think everyone who is doing the program, who has got to this point, is starting to really feel the difference now. So today we're talking about grains and cereals, and this information here amazes everybody. It certainly did for us. You may find here the answers to many questions regarding your health. For my husband in particular, this was life-changing. It resolved, it quite literally resolved issues that he'd been living with since infancy, issues which no medical specialist was able to give him advice about. And he was at this point of the program, like 12 days into it, when he was able to renounce the pharmaceutical that he'd been taking for 4.5 years at that point. So yeah, let's get into it, because yeah, this has information that has the potential to change your life. So cereals and grains are the same, right? They're all the same, but I like to use both terms as they help to clarify what we're talking about. It's an ingredient category that includes the foods most loved by everyone, and it's important to realize that it includes all types of grains, from wheat to millet to barley to rye, gluten grains and gluten-free grains, refined and whole grains. Right, so it's really important to know that all of them in any form or derivative are bad news for our intestine and for other things that are going on. So let's take a look. Number one we know, right? High insulin production, little or no nutrition. Right, we know that grains are, so firstly, grains are a cheap form of fuel. They're empty or poor in nutrition, and a small amount contains a lot of calories. When they enter the digestive system, they're quickly broken down into simple sugars. So this is a revision. When the simple sugars enter the bloodstream as glucose, they raise the level of glucose in the blood, inducing a release of insulin. Insulin's job is to extract excess glucose out of the blood and store it somewhere. And this triggers a chain reaction that includes carbohydrate addiction, excess insulin production, weight gain, inability to burn fat, and chronic systemic inflammation, you know, with all of its complications of obesity and diabetes and heart disease and atherosclerosis and the full range of lifestyle disease, right? So you're starting to sort of get familiar with how this chain reaction occurs. Number two, secondly, all grains contain phytates. And phytates are anti-nutrients, right? Yes, you read correctly, anti-nutrients. Now, nutrients provide the body with all of the good things that it needs to thrive, but anti-nutrients bind and block the absorption of minerals such as calcium and iron and zinc and magnesium, and vitamins, including vitamins A and C and B12, right? These phytates, these anti-nutrients, interfere with the synthesis of vitamin D3, and therefore the nutritional value of grains is compromised because the nutrients are not bioavailable. Right? Now, phytates are found in particular in the bran of the seed, which means that whole grains contain more anti-nutrients than refined ones. Okay, so this is this is one of those things that's just like, why isn't this common inflammation? It's called common inflammation. Why isn't this common information, particularly in the world of vegetarianism and veganism, whereby the assumption is that we can obtain all of our nutrients from legumes and cereals, and grains and cereals, and yeah, you can see that it's not true. Legumes, we look at that tomorrow, and you'll see that it sort of falls into the same category. Third point, lectin. Lectins. Thirdly, all cereals and grains contain lectins. Lectins are natural plant toxins. They are the evolutionary defense mechanism of the seeds. Now, all grains and cereals are seeds, right? And the role of seeds, like any other living creature, is to survive predators and setbacks long enough to reproduce the species, right? So along with situations such as heat and moisture and bacteria, seeds must be able to survive the digestive system of the animals that consume them. And this includes humans, right? So humans have ingested lectins for a very short time on the evolutionary timeline. And we lack the enzymes that are capable of effectively breaking them down into their individual amino acids. And interestingly, only birds have eaten seeds long enough to successfully digest them. You know, we know this when we go trekking, when we go for a walk in the hills or in the countryside, and we see the droppings of animals and of animals in particular, like badgers and wombats and things like that. And you'll see that they're full of seeds. You know, when the seeds are dropping, when in that particular season, you know, you'll see that their droppings are full of seeds. They haven't been digested, right? Same thing happens with us. You know, the problem, because we're not able to successfully digest them, you know, the problem is that they damage the lining of the gut, right? They causing inflammation and the condition known as leaky gut or the hyperpermeable gut, right? So this is part of their survival mechanism. Now, as we've read in the past emails, damage to the gut allows foreign protein particles, which are supposed to be excreted in the feces, to enter the bloodstream. When that happens, the immune system responds with inflammation, right? And this situation can become further complicated by molecular mimicry and the production of autoantibodies that may lead to autoimmune disease. So we saw this yesterday. Now, all humans are intolerant to the lectins in cereals and grains. Okay, full stop, right? This isn't common knowledge. For some reason, they don't want us to know this, but this is the situation. We are all intolerant to lectins in cereals and grains. We simply haven't evolved to digest them, right? And sure, indigenous communities from the beginning of time have eaten seeds and cereals, but in very, very small quantities, yeah, and only when they were in season. But the problem now, is that we're eating these things, you know, several times a day from infancy onwards. Okay, this is the problem. So lectin sensitivity manifests itself as a mild inflammatory state. Reactions can occur in any system in the body where the lectin proteins are able to enter. Right? So symptoms include, but are not limited to, digestive problems that are so common that we think they're normal, such as diarrhea and gas and bloating and acid reflux, allergies such as sneezing and excess mucus production, skin problems such as acne and blemishes, headaches, migraines, joint pain, reproductive issues, you know, the list goes on. And, you know, before I started with this program back in 2014, my excess mucus production was just incredible. It was waking me up every night. Poor old my Fiorenzo thought that he was sleeping with a fish, because, you know, in the middle of the night I'd have so much mucus production. And yeah, changed our diet, and all of that has gone away, and no longer get sinusitis or, you know, there's seasonal allergies, all gone, and the joint pain, yeah. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing when you sort of get this into action and stick with it. Prolamines and gluten. So still talking about these lectins, these natural plant toxins. There are two types of lectins in particular that all Homo sapiens have difficulty digesting, and these are the prolamines and the agglutinins. Now, agglutinins are sticky, right? So agglutinins are sticky, and what that means is that foreign particles, the things that should stay out, the foreign particles can stick to them, and that way they catch a passage into the bloodstream through the damaged junctures of a leaky gut. Now, the prolamines are very difficult to digest and actively damage the lining of the intestine. Now, gluten is the most famous prolamine due to the severe autoimmune reaction experienced by sufferers of celiac disease. And other prolamines include avenine, oats, zein, corn, and orzonin in rice. So to be clear here, celiac is an autoimmune disease in which the immune system's reaction to any amount of gluten severely damages the enterocyte cells that line the small intestine. Gluten intolerance or sensitivity is not an autoimmune disease, nor does it severely damage the enterocyte cells, but it does activate an immune response and it does create gastrointestinal disturbances. And gluten sensitivity and gluten intolerance are real. They're not just fashion, right? You hear that every now and again. Oh, no gluten is just a fashion. It's not. It's very real. And lectin intolerance, right? So where there's an intolerance to all of these lectins, that also exists. It's just not that well known. And this is what we discovered about Fiorenzo, that he even though he'd done all the tests and he'd done the whole round of specialists and everything, but what we found out through our own trial and error and doing this program is that he's intolerant to lectins, right? He has to be very, very careful when it comes to eating any type of cereal or grain. And it's a lot better now, years down the track, now that we've done all of that, gut healing, it's much better. But yeah, it's worth keeping the gut healthy. Number 4, gliadin, the protein in grains which are addictive. This is fascinating as well. The 4th reason why we want to be avoiding grains and cereals, why they're problematic for our health, is that many wheat products contain gliadin. Now, gliadin is a protein found in the dwarf wheat that is commonly grown today. This gliadin, this protein, converts to opioid polypeptides, which bind to opioid receptors in the brain, and opioid stimulation is addictive. So another, right? So this gliadin protein causes addiction, and another consequence of gliadin is that it stimulates the appetite, causing people to consume up to 400 extra calories a day. Now, food manufacturers began adding wheat gliadin to industrialized foods about 25 years ago, which correlates with the rise in obesity and type 2 diabetes. Right? So as you can imagine, a combination of gliadin, carbohydrates and sugar, as found in bread and baked goods, is a recipe for addiction. And this is perfect for the food industry, but it's not so good for our health. Right? And in the little turquoise box there, there's just an interesting little fact here about the anti-gliadin IgA. The anti-gliadin IgA is an antibody produced in the gut in anticipation of an impending gluten threat. And one study found that this IgA was present in nearly 30% of subjects who otherwise showed no evidence of gluten sensitivity. Yeah, so this is the thing, we're all sensitive to these issues, even if we're not, breaking out into, major inflammatory situation every time we eat them. There's stuff going on that we're not aware of. And so in the eat section today, there's a little section here on cassava flour, which is also known as manioca flour. It basically just depends on which country it's coming from. It's perfect for the paleo diet because it's a tuber. It's not a grain, and it's sort of it's a flour that's really easily substituted for wheat flour in cooking and baking. It's not the same as wheat flour, because it doesn't have the gluten. It's not going to cause, it's not going to create, the beautiful fluffy breads and cakes and things like that. But in terms of keeping us healthy, it's okay. It's still flour. Yeah, it's still flour. We don't want to go overboard with it. So read this through and be intelligent with it. And also I've just sort of distinguished there between, when you're buying it, just distinguish between the flour and the starch. Okay, so starch, the starch will be very, very white and is used for thickeners, for thickening sauces and stews, whereas the flour is just like a flour, which is good for using in baking. Okay, so that's it for today. Some advice there as to how to reduce stress. Being Sunday. Is it Sunday today? Did I say it's Sunday? I don't know whether I did. Anyway, yeah, it's the day for just playing or resting, seeing what you feel like doing. Spend a little time in your diary reflecting upon the past week. And yeah, well done. End of the second week. Tomorrow we start the third week. Okay, see you tomorrow.